Good evening. The hour of 6:30 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and the city website. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. All right, our first thing is a roll call, please.
Richard Clow.
Here.
Edward Guyot.
Here.
Adam Burke.
Here.
Tad Schrantz.
Here.
And our newest regular member on the board, Zach Leroy.
Here.
Edward, Mr. Chair.
All right. Our next thing is review of the previous meeting minutes. Have people had a chance to take a look at those? Do we have any comments? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
That's Mr. Guyot made the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Schrantz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None. It passed unanimously. Thank you. All right. Do we have any unfinished business?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So let us move to our first application. We have ZBA 2025-08. Petitioner Michael Pappas of 147 to 151 Main Street LLC, represented by Timothy Sampson of Sampson Architects, requests an extension for property located at 147 Main Street, tax map number 58406000000, and is in the downtown core district. Petitioner is requesting an extension for a special exception granted on August 7th, 2023 per Article 26.6.9 of the zoning regulations.
So, Mr. Chairman, the staff received a communication from the applicant's representative on this application. They have contracted with a Mr. Eli Lano of Bernstein Shore and Associates. It's a law firm out of Manchester. They are apologizing for their late addition onto this application and are requesting a continuance so that they can be properly prepared to present this application to the board at the November meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion as to anyone's thoughts on that?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. For the extensions, how does that process work, and how often are they able to extend the application?
I do not know. Is there any sort of limitation on that?
It really comes down to the board's deference on this one. In my professional experience, I have seen zoning cases where attorneys have become involved and they've asked for a couple of continuances to be properly prepared for applications. That's certainly not the norm. It is not unheard of to happen. However, I'm personally feeling confident that this representative will be ready in November, and would encourage the board to grant the continuance to November. And I did explain to Mr. Lano that this application had already been continued due to absenteeism, and further delay beyond November is not recommended. So they're aware of the situation.
Excellent, excellent. All right, then do I have a motion to continue this to the November regularly scheduled meeting, which is on?
The November
Is
3rd.
discussion over?
We can still have discussion.
Oh,
Yeah, so
I was going to
Sure.
say, I personally feel that since we gave them 2 continuances already without even their own
presence or request, I feel like this is pushing it a little too far. I think it's disrespectful to the process, but, so I don't know if it warrants another continuance.
So asking if we did not grant a continuance, what would their process then be?
Ultimately, we'd end up hearing the application anyway. They'd motion for a rehearing, and we'd more or less be forced to grant it because we never heard the application.
Right.
So they challenged the decision to of the denial that we would be granting tonight, and all it would really do would just be adding some minor costs to the applicant for renoticing and things like that, and we'd still end up hearing the application and pending an
Yeah.
appeal, the behavior of the board, while not necessarily unjustified, generally speaking, it's recommended to be a little lenient as opposed to.
Yeah, thank you. I acknowledge that
Yeah.
sentiment completely. But also, I do know bringing a new person on board who we have dealt with that person before, is a little more accountable than what we've seen thus far in this application. I do agree with Evan that we would probably see real movement on this in November, but
Yeah. One more question, just from a process standpoint, is, so they got a variance, how long is that variance valid? It seems like it's been out there for a few years, so is there a timeline associated with that?
So it's, this particular application is a special exception. Special exceptions and variances are good for 2 years unless acted upon. And then after 2 years, they expire. So the genesis of this application was the original special exception that was granted was going to expire. So they are submitting an extension of that approval, which through the process in the Land Development Code, that extension request is treated like a new application. So if we were to deny this application and then the 30-day appeal period were to expire without any challenge to that decision, that special exception would be null and void, and the Land Development Code has since changed, and so the applicant would not be able to reapply for a new special exception for this situation. They would have to get a variance.
Can I just clarify something you said? You said they were preparing for an addition to the application, or is that just a choice of words? It didn't mean they're adding on to the application, it's just looking at the original application and an extension on that application.
Yeah, it's an extension of the original approval, which is treated like a new application, but they're not proposing any changes to the previous approval.
Thank you.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Zach's observation. The applicant has had a long history of delaying and not showing up. However, the change of representation I see as very encouraging to the process, and again, knowing that particular firm, I think we'll be able to move this forward. So I'm okay with bringing it forward for November.
All right, so can I have someone make a motion to do a continuance of that for the regularly scheduled November 3rd meeting?
I'll move that we bring this application forward at the November meeting.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
That was Mr. Schrantz, and the motion was made by Mr. Guyot. All those in favor of forwarding it to the November 3rd meeting, please signify with aye.
Aye.
And that's 4. All opposed? And opposition was 1 by Mr. Leroy. Thank you. All right, moving on. ZBA 2025-13, petitioner Mike Golke of Markham Homage, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefevre of Fieldstone Land Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests a variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map 598-002-000-000-002, and is in the Industrial Park District. The petitioner requests a variance to allow a lot that does not meet the setback requirements per Article 6.3.2 of the zoning regulations. Could we hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evan Clements, Planner, Deputy Zoning Administrator. As I mentioned with the applicant before the meeting started, we've got several cases this evening, all resolving around the same project. So I'll do the intro, kind of describing the property and surrounding uses and things like that for this first application. And then for all subsequent applications, I'll tighten it up to just the most pertinent points. And we can maybe save a little bit of time as we work our way through all of this. So that being said, the subject property is an existing 31-acre parcel located on the southern side of Tiffin Street, approximately 1,000 feet from the Optical Ave Marble Street intersection with Timken Manufacturing located directly to the east. The property is home to the Markham Image corporate headquarters campus, consisting of several buildings with approximately 246,000 square feet of office, manufacturing, and warehouse floor space. The property also contains associated site improvements such as walkways, drive aisles, parking area, and drainage systems. The property is also home to a 798 square foot building located in the northeast corner of the parcel along Tiffin Street, which contains an indoor squash court owned and operated by the Amalgamated Squash, Chowder, and Development Corporation. In 1976, an agreement was made to relocate the building from West Street to its current location, and there are 3 parking spaces associated with the squash court. And fun fact, it is the oldest indoor squash court in the United States. The purpose of this application is to seek a variance from the setback requirements of the Industrial Park Zoning District to allow for the subdivision of a new parcel to accommodate the squash court and its associated parking spaces. The request is to permit a 37.8 rear setback where 50 feet would normally be required. Surrounding uses for the subject parcel include industrial manufacturing and single-family residential to the north. To the south, we have some vacant and state highway. East is more industrial manufacturing. West is state highway and industrial manufacturing and conservation. I've provided the definition for the industrial park zoning district as well as the dimensional requirements for the district in the staff report. The sample motion is also presented if the board is inclined to approve this request, and staff is recommending no conditions at this time. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions if the board may have.
Do any of the board members have questions for Evan?
I have one in general, and maybe it's Evan or the applicant. Is the squash court building on the National Historic Register?
I don't know if it is. I don't believe it is.
I don't believe it is either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other? All right, let's hear from the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is John LaFave. Is this microphone on? Let me make sure, yeah.
Should say green.
Green's good. My name is John LaFave with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm here tonight on behalf of Markham Image. What we have is Markham Image owns, as mentioned, about 31 acres with about 246,000 square feet of warehouse office space, and they do not utilize all the space. There was a time where these properties were used to a greater margin. There's some history with these properties. It was once New England Box Company, once Platt's Box Company. Markham Image has utilized the space for many years. There was a time when they were utilizing a lot of the building space, but not anymore. They actually only utilize very little of the building space. So to maintain all the buildings together, it's a lot of upkeep. You're heating for no reason. You're not occupying it. Electricity, water. There's things like, roof repairs, landscaping, plowing. And then if you were to get someone to lease the property, coming in, monies that you'd collect from leases, you're basically putting back into the buildings. And, they haven't had any interest on anybody that wants to lease it. They have been approached by several people that were looking for office space or manufacturing space. We did have an application before this board, I think it was 2 years ago. There was a woman that wanted to occupy one of the buildings to make a bakery products. But that fell through where she couldn't get funding for the building. Markham stepped back to look at it as a bigger property plan and said, what are we looking to do here? What do we want to occupy? So basically what they're looking to do is they're looking to separate the buildings on the property. One of the buildings, as mentioned, is the Amalgamated Squash and Chowder Development Corporation. Funny name. It has some history. So this building was located on Main Street near the bank. And in '76, I believe the bank property was being sold. They didn't have a place to put the building. They offered to them to be able to locate the building on the property. So it's been there ever since. The city of Keene has given it a tax map lot number. It really isn't a lot. It's just the building on the property. It consists of no bathrooms, no fun. It's basically you go in there. It's a racquetball court with a few spaces, so squash court, and so it's not like a lot of people come here and use it. There's only got a few people that use it at a time. They have members that come and use it. The history of being the oldest squash court in the United States is pretty cool. Markham wants to be able to give them that property so they can have it. It can have its historic significance can continue. So if they're looking to separate themselves or separate the buildings, they're also looking at the interests of the squash club. They'd like to see them be able to have that as their own lot with their own parking spaces and be able to maintain their status. So tonight I'm here before you to ask for or request variances in relationship to the subdivision of this property. The property was developed before a lot of these zoning regulations came into play. So to be able to subdivide it makes it difficult where separation distances between buildings don't exist to the degree that the set dimensional requirements want them to be. And then to be able to capture a parking lot that works with this building, to be able to capture walkways, to be able to capture everything is near impossible. But we did try to get as close to the regulations as we could and only ask for variances where we believe that they were necessary. So the first item that we have tonight is, as Evan mentioned, is for the squash club to be able to create that lot so they could have their own existence.
Thank you. So to help us with the deliberations, could you go through the 5 criteria for us?
Sure.
You don't have to read it verbatim if you want to summarize.
I think I'll do the first one verbatim, and then where a lot of these are repetitive due to the dimensional requirements of the regulations, the buildings in existence prior to the regulations. I mean, a lot of my content is rather repetitive, and then, like I said, I'll point out some differences as we go through the applications. Is that fair?
Yes, fine with me.
Which one are we reading first, Evan? This is from section 3.2, Article 6. Is that the first one you have? Because I don't know if I'm in order with you, so.
I was just getting myself all organized and then I just unorganized.
6.3.2.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, excuse me. Granting the variance is not to be contrary to the public interest. The proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The purpose of the zoning ordinance is to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Setback requirements are intended to ensure appropriate physical and visual separation between adjacent land uses and to maintain adequate distance between adjacent buildings and the street. The existing building on the proposed lot was originally constructed in the early 1900s and was relocated to Markham Corporation property in 1976. It has remained in its current location unchanged for nearly 50 years. The Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation is not proposing any new construction, only the transfer of land ownership. I'm going to run through all five.
Might as well go through all of them, and then we'll direct some questions to you.
Thank you. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the spirit of the ordinance is to ensure adequate separation from buildings to adjacent properties and the street. The proposed relief is to the side setback of a dead-end road. It will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure public rights. For these reasons, we believe the proposed variance will observe the spirit of the ordinance. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting this variance serves the interest of substantial justice. It will enable the property owner to transfer a portion of the land to the Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation, which has leased the site since 1976. The property owner would benefit from the relief of tax and liability obligations associated with this parcel. Denying the variance would provide no corresponding public benefit, as no new development is proposed and there would be no impact on density. If the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished because the abutters will not experience any substantial change from granting this variance. The area of the current recreational squash building will remain the only building on the lot with 3 parking spaces. It is our experience that creating a lot while making no improvements to the building or surrounding area will not diminish surrounding property values. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision of the property because the setback requirements are intended to ensure appropriate physical and visual separation between adjacent land uses and to maintain adequate distance between buildings and the street. Literal enforcement of the ordinance would overlook the fact that this building predates the regulations. Consideration should also be given to the fact that this is a low-traffic and low-density area. Therefore, the variance will have no impact on the general public of Keene. For this and the reasons stated above, we believe there is no substantial relationship between the general public purpose and the division of this lot. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The proposed use is reasonable, with no substantial changes being made to the existing building or the surrounding land. The creation of the ordinance after the construction of the building imposes a hardship as the Amalgamated Squash, Chowder, and Development Corporation has occupied and enjoyed this building since 1976. The transfer of ownership of this portion of the property will relieve the current owner of liability. Explain how, if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established. Or do you want me to do that one? Or sometimes,
We'll hold off on that and let questions come forth, and
Thank you.
that may necessitate that, or that might have been answered already.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I have questions from the board for the applicant?
I've got a question for you, Chairman.
Certainly.
I'll direct it to you, but as I read through the application, it looks like the requirement for zoning is 4 acres, and they're looking for a .17 acre lot for this particular property, is that right?
Right, it's a combination of many things. The specific thing is the setback, but ultimately to just have a sliver of a lot, enough for the building and, as you said, 3 parking spots.
3 parking spaces.
Yep.
The building is very small. It's got a couple squash courts inside, and basically a couple people will come and play, and alternate use.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I'm going to follow up on that thought. So the application is for the setbacks, but it's not for the size of the lot. And should that be taken into consideration in the application?
We actually have several variance applications, but each variance is treated as a separate application. So you're going to see an application for the size of the lot, you're going to see an application for the use of the property, and we just started with the setbacks.
Thank you. Yes.
A question, and maybe Evan, you're gonna have to jump in on this. So let's just cast a scenario where, following up with Tad's concern, that we have the setback and we say, yes, that's okay. But we get to the next application, which is separate, and it's the lot size, and we say, no. What do we have? Where do we go from there?
The applicant would need to adjust. So they've got some different choices. They could appeal that decision. They could come in with a new application for a different size lot. But yeah, there is some risk here this evening that the applicant is taking. They're obligated to do this one at a time. And the aggregate of these decisions will be the outcome of this project moving forward. The applicant currently has a subdivision application pending to go to the planning board that is dependent on the decisions that you are all making this evening.
And this is, again, a procedural question. Is there a way to look at these applications in more of a holistic, collective way?
I think you're allowed to do that in a general sense. Ultimately, each request is going to need to stand on its own merits, but you are aware that you have 3 applications before you this evening with the intent of creating a small, unique lot that is designed, sort of custom tailored, if you will, for the amalgamated squash court building.
So you're saying we can discuss all at the same time concurrently, but we have to vote on them separately regardless?
Yeah, I don't think that's entirely inappropriate. It's not like it's a zoning map amendment where you're not supposed to, this is something that the council deals with, where they're not supposed to think about a specific use. They have to think about all of the uses. You can look at the larger project here.
All right, that makes a lot of sense to me. So let's, if there are no other questions on this specific element for the applicant, we could ask for comments in opposition to this. Do we have anyone here who is in opposition? If you are, you can come and approach the microphone and identify yourself. You can stay seated there. We have the other microphone.
I thought someone was coming up, so I was making.
Okay, so why don't we table deliberation discussions? It sounds like people would like to maybe hear the next application and maybe get a bigger picture of this whole thing, and then we can go back a little bit and do each one in turn.
That's where I was hoping
Is
to
that,
head.
is that sound, okay. So is that okay for us to do?
Yeah, I think that's fine, as long as we go back.
Right, right.
And I was actually, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I meant to run this by you first. My recommendation was going to be to do this case, number 13, number 14, and then number 18, which is the use variance for the use of the property itself. Those 3 applications together cover, and John, tune me up if I'm wrong here, those 3 applications will encompass all of amalgamated squash. And then the other 3 applications are related to the Markham Amage campus.
Okay,
He's correct, so, I'm sorry, excuse me tonight. So the Markham Amage property where the squash court exists, where we're looking to create a lot for the squash club, there are 3 requests for variances. So I think it does make sense to run through those in unison. The other 3 variances deal with trying to separate the properties where there's dimensional restraints for existing buildings.
All right. So since there's no other discussion on that, I'll read into the record ZBA 2025-14. We can go through that much the same way we just did this, then 2025-18, and then we can go into a bigger discussion and then break everything apart again.
Yeah,
All right.
and then we just have to make sure that we provide an opportunity for public comment
In
on,
each.
on each one of those.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so entering into the record, ZBA 2025-14, petitioner Mike Goki of Markham Image, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefebvre of Fieldstone Land Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests a variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000-001-002, and is in the Industrial Park District. The petitioner requests a variance to allow a lot that does not meet the minimum lot size requirements per Article 6.3.2 of the zoning regulations. And briefly from staff?
Briefly from staff, so the purpose of this application is to allow for the creation of a lot that is 0.17 acres in size, where 4 acres is normally required. And the rest of the staff report looks identical to the first one. So you've got the dimensional table with the setbacks and the minimum lot area in there, as well as the definition for industrial park. And staff is also recommending no conditions if the board is so inclined to approve this request.
Okay, any questions of the board for staff? All right, Mr. Lefebvre?
It's, it's Lefebvre. I was letting it go the first couple times, but. So this is very repetitive for this property. As mentioned, we're trying to create this small 0.17 acre, is to give an opportunity for the squash club to exist. Where everything's repetitive, there are a few points that we did make. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the master plan for the city of Keene aims to promote the stewardship of New Hampshire's resources for recreation and other activities that contribute to the health and quality of life for the citizens and visitors in New Hampshire. That's one of the reasons why we believe the proposed variance would observe the spirit of both the ordinance and the master plan. So I just wanted to add that one more key point to this application, that we did point out where the use of it as a recreational use is, within the master plan. A lot of the other things are repetitive. I am happy to read everything, but if you want to move on, we can simply move to the third, and I can point out any changes in that application as well.
What would staff recommend?
Was afraid you were going to ask me. I'm split on it. There's definitely a part of me that thinks that the applicant's rationale for why they should be granted needs to be read into the record. But there's also a part of me who's sitting here now and I can remember what was said 30 seconds ago. But I think for the sake of
I'm happy to read it.
Yeah,
propriety,
I would
think-
appreciate that.
just-
That
yeah,
just
it's just
dot all
better.
the i's, cross
Yep.
the t's.
A moment ago, it sounded like the intention was to do what I just did, so, but I'm happy to read this. It don't take very long. So I'll run through.
You can paraphrase. You don't have to do it word for word.
I'll run through it. It's good to have it for the record. Granting the variance is not contrary to the public interest. The proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The zoning ordinance is in place to ensure public health, welfare, and safety. The minimum lot size provision is required by the ordinance to manage the development, control density, and preserve the character of the area. The existing building on the proposed lot was built in the early 1900s and moved to the Markham Corporation lot in 1976. The building will remain the only structure on the lot. used for recreational purposes, along with 3 parking spaces. The lot is being created solely for the ownership and liability purposes. Consequently, the creation of this lot will have no impact on public health, welfare, or safety. The Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation aims to promote health, pleasure, and social and mental improvement of the members. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the spirit of the ordinance is to manage development, control density, and preserve the character of the area. The spirit will be upheld by leaving the property unchanged except for the creation of a new lot for ownership and liability purposes. The proposed relief to create a lot smaller than the required minimum lot size will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare. The otherwise infringe upon public rights. The master plan for the city of Keene aims to promote the stewardship of New Hampshire's resources for recreation and other activities that contribute to the health and quality of life for citizens and visitors in New Hampshire. For these reasons, we believe the proposed variance will observe the spirit of both the ordinance and the master plan. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting this variance serves the interests of substantial justice. It will enable the property owner to transfer a portion of the land to the Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation, which has leased the building since 1976. The property owner would benefit from the relief of tax and liability obligations associated with this parcel. Denying the variance would provide no corresponding public benefit, as no new development is proposed and there would be no impact on density. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the abutters will not experience any substantial change from granting this variance. The area of the current recreational squash building will remain the only building on the lot with 3 parking spaces. It is our experience that creating a lot while making no improvements to the building or surrounding area will not diminish surrounding property values. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the general public purpose of the ordinance is to manage development, control density, and preserve the character of the area. Literal enforcement of the ordinance would overlook the fact that this building predates the regulations. Consideration should also be given to the fact that this is a low-traffic area. Therefore, the variance will have no impact on the general public of Keene. For this and the reasons stated above, we believe there is no substantial relationship between the general public purpose and the division of this lot. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The proposed use is reasonable with no substantial changes being made to the existing building or the surrounding land. The creation of the ordinance after the construction of the building imposes a hardship, as the Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation has occupied and enjoyed this building since 1976. The transfer of ownership of this portion of property will relieve the current owner of liability.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant from the board at this time? We can certainly reopen later. Do we have anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this? Anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this? All right, let us move on to the last one pertaining to this. So let's enter into the record ZBA 2025-18. Petitioner Mike Goki of Markham Image, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefevre of Fieldstone Land Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests a variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000, and is in the Industrial Park District. Petitioner requests a variance to allow an indoor recreation/entertainment facility where not permitted per Article 6.3.5 of the zoning regulations. And staff report, please.
Mr. Chairman, before I get into the staff report, Would you mind if I just touch base with the members of the audience to make sure that they're following along with
Certainly,
just
absolutely.
the way that the business
Absolutely.
is going? So for everybody who's here tonight, it's a little atypical. Normally, each case is its own kind of separate unit, and you can kind of follow from the beginning all the way to the conclusion. The way we're doing it this evening is in a way that we think makes sense, but if, barring the, Mr. Chairman, if we get to a point where you're just super confused and you're like, hey, I've got concerns, but I'm not sure where it's like my part to speak in, can they just raise their hand and we can figure that out?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if, even if the course that we're doing right now is confusing and you want to just say, we don't know what in the world you're doing, that is fine also. No problem whatsoever at any time to ask for a little more clarity on any element of this.
Cool.
Thank you. Thanks, Evan.
You're welcome.
And I do have a question. I mean, do I have to go to the microphone?
Yep.
Can we entertain that
Yes,
question,
yes,
Mr.
let's
Chairman?
entertain just a comment.
Hi, I'm Marion Connell. I live on Martin Street. And when you talk about the squash court, this is where you seem to be focusing. And 3 parking spaces, right? Okay, it's in a giant parking lot with 60 parking spaces, right? In my brain, I want to know what's happening with 60 parking spaces next to the lot.
It's different.
Yeah, so right now,
It's on the other side of the street, Marion.
so right now, we're just focused on this little
Okay,
piece of land right here.
I do understand that.
Okay.
But if one thing is passed, does everything have to get passed, or can you say, okay, you can have your squash court, which that's wonderful, but in this parking lot, I'm gonna put Olive Garden or whatever you're gonna do. I mean, it's like, where does that, to see the whole picture, like you said, would be wonderful, and I understand that's way too much at once. I get that. Does it set a precedent for the rest of the city of Keene? Not at all?
Not at all.
For their variances to go back this far? It does not?
No.
They
No.
would have to,
So,
okay.
a very simple principle with land use decisions is every case is unique, every piece of property is unique, everything is different. A decision that this board makes this evening to grant relief, a grant of variance, does not automatically mean that anybody else with a squash court in the city gets to have a small lot wherever they want it to be too, and that this board would have to grant that decision.
I see. That's good. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
I do feel that way, that we don't see the whole big picture yet.
so may I continue, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're asking great questions, and I'm really glad you brought them up because I want you all to understand what's happening this evening.
Thank you for answering.
So there are 3 requests that we're currently going over right now
Yes,
with the goal of creating a little lot for the squash court.
yes.
If they get 1, 2, and 3, they'll be able to move forward with that.
What if only one passes, or 2 passes and 1 doesn't, then what do we
Could you come up to the microphone?
do? Can you ask?
Go ahead, guy, you want to ask?
This is just for the benefit of the minute taker, so I
Right.
I
And
apologize.
just identify yourself
I'm
too.
Kyle Gunnell, I live on Martin Street also. So my concern was, what if you grant the proposal for the small lot, you grant the proposal for the setback, but you don't grant the proposal for the rec?
For the use,
For the
for
rec
how,
use.
for the indoor
So how does
recreation.
that affect the other 2? Or you don't accept the setback, but you accept the other 2? Or, you know what I mean?
It-
If 2 out of the 3 pass, then
It,
what do you do?
it is then on the applicant to, they're gonna be stuck a little bit,
So
certainly.
it doesn't move forward?
Their current subdivision application for the planning board would probably need to be paused because they would need to redo the merits of that application based on the change. They may choose to pause it in its entirety to readdress what didn't happen this evening in an attempt to come up with a way to get the board to support the request. That's the best answer I can give
I
you.
mean, my opinion, I don't have an issue with it. I've lived there 21 years. It sets back, it's got trees. You don't know if anybody's there for the most part. I mean, that's part of it I don't have an issue with,
Okay.
so.
So,
Can we just play tag for a second? You're, okay. Marion again. I feel like they're talking about this squash court. I feel like I'm being thrown to pay attention to this, so we don't pay attention to acres and acres that are happening. This is a quiet part of town. Heck, why? That's right. But if you make apartments or you build buildings and you do things that you're not talking about yet, you're talking about a little squash garden. That's fine. We can see it. We can see it a little in the woods, cute. But what, do you get what I'm saying?
yeah,
right?
I understand where you're going. So,
May I?
if you can go for it, John.
So, what we're looking to do.
Yeah, give him a microphone, please.
So what we're looking to do is to subdivide the Markham and Marsh property so that each building can be used by an individual owner. The uses that are allowed are industrial park. If someone wanted to come in and do housing, they would have to come in to this board and propose that change that's not allowed. So all we're asking for is for these buildings to be able to be used for what they're allowed for,
Just industrial.
just industrial. We're not looking for a change. Any change would require somebody coming before this board to get a use that's not allowed in that area. Malcolm's just looking for someone to occupy these buildings. They're hoping that someone can make use of the property and be able to create jobs for the community. We don't have any proposal for residential. If somebody comes in here and wants to do that, like I said, they're gonna have to come before the planning,
Yes.
before the board, and say what they're doing is why. And I think at those times, I think you would have merit to say that, but we're not proposing any of
That's not
that.
what you're asking for now.
We are not asking for
But that's
that.
something that could come at them
In which
because of this change.
you would be
correct?
notified, if somebody did that, you would be notified.
Yes.
And it would be
I
a
know
meeting
it
like
would.
that tonight. All we're looking to do is to have separate, to be able to have somebody own these buildings separately. 246,000 square feet of space is a lot.
It is a lot.
So if you can't use it all, and somebody can use 50,000 on that lot where that building is, that's what they're hopeful for, that someone will want to come in and purchase that property. They'll have something that they'll produce a good, they'll do something that's allowed in that district to be able to utilize that building, and it'll do good for the community. This does align with the master plan. They do want to see existing properties to be used to their value. This one's a difficult one where the buildings were built prior to the regulations being passed. The couple of regulations you're going to see we're asking for relief from are in the next proposal. So while right now we are speaking to this small piece right here, the squash club, we're going to be speaking to the whole property on the next three applications, and there's going to be 3 areas where we're asking for relief. Does that help?
You're saying after this, you're going to the general.
After these
area.
3 applications, we're trying to hear these 3 applications together, because if we started talking about this, and we jumped over here, everybody would be extremely confused. But to create this lot right here, there's 3 different regulations that we need to get relief from. One of them is the use, because while it exists on its own, grandfathered use, as soon as we change into ownership, we have to ask for a special exception. It's an accessory use to this property, where it'll be the sole use for this property. So it's
Is it the opening for,
no,
it's not, this little area isn't the opening to everything else?
no, this is
Well, just.
this
not-
is just to allow history to exist on this property.
But he wants to sell all of that, doesn't he? All the other acreage?
No, they're gonna occupy one of the buildings, but they have 2 buildings they
For
don't
work,
use.
For what they've been doing?
Yes. Yes, but they have 2 vacant buildings that are just sitting there, and they're trying to make use of them. We did try to get a variance for this front building before. The woman that approached them to put a bakery in
Yeah, yeah.
backed out of the deal.
It's too bad.
Yeah, and they've had other people to approach them for the other space they have, but nobody wants to lease something. People want to own it. So we want this building, somebody can own it. Their employees can park in this parking lot. They can make use of it for the uses allowed in the industrial park. They're going to occupy this building. They're going to make use of it for the same thing they're doing. To be able to sell this building, it'd be the same thing. They would be somebody, I don't know, makes sweaters, makes something, does something with the industrial park. They need a space, they have employees. They want to buy this so they can utilize it. So that's all we're looking to do, is just to separate the buildings ownership-wise. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
But you understand where I'm coming
I totally understand where you're coming from. I think I'm going to read what is allowed in the industrial park to give you an idea. It's a very short list. So office, research and development, daycare, data center, and light industrial. There's the only permitted uses within the district. So like restaurants, housing, clubs,
They could come to you and ask for that.
they would have to do what this project is coming to do regarding the indoor recreation,
Right.
which will only be allowed on the little lot they're proposing to create
I get
for
it,
the squash
yes.
court.
So if someone wanted to do that, they'd have to come to all of you again.
Yes, and you would be notified again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, a little unorthodox, but I believe substantial justice was done.
Yes, absolutely.
I think this is a unique case too, I mean.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So, I don't remember where we left off. I apologize.
We had I had just asked, just read into the record, dash 18.
Yep.
And was just asking for feedback, and then you can present on that also.
Yeah, so we're at the beginning of the use variance, so I'm going to read the relevant portion of my staff report. The request is to allow for an indoor recreation / entertainment facility use in the industrial park for the proposed small lot, which is not normally permitted. And we sort of got into the rationale, excuse me, I'm exploding. The squash court was considered an accessory use to the principal use, which was the Markham Amage campus. So as it existed legally as part of that larger property, the act of creating its own lot brings into question what the principal use of that lot will be. And the answer to that question is a squash court, which is not allowed in the industrial park. So the applicant needs the use variance to allow for the indoor recreation and entertainment, which is our category that a squash court would fall within. And that's all I got.
Thank you, and we could hear from Mr. Lefebvre.
Thank you very much. So this is Article 6, Section 3.5. Granting the variance is not, I'm sorry, granting the variance is not contrary to the public interest. The proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The zoning ordinance is in place to ensure public health, welfare, and safety. The current use provision is required by the ordinance to ensure land is used for its intended and appropriate purposes. The existing building on the proposed lot was built in the early 1900s and moved to the Markham Corporation lot in 1976. This building will remain the only structure on the lot and continue to be used for recreational purposes. The lot being created solely for ownership and liability purposes. Consequently, the creation of this lot will have no impact on public health, welfare, or safety. The Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation aims to promote health, pleasure, and social and mental improvement of the members. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the spirit of the ordinance is ensuring land is used for its intended and appropriate purposes. The spirit will be upheld by leaving the property unchanged except for the creation of a new lot for ownership and liability purposes. The proposed relief to allow the property to be used for recreational purposes will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise infringe upon public rights. The master plan for the city of Keene aims to promote the stewardship of New Hampshire's resources for recreation and other activities that contribute to the health and quality of life for citizens and visitors in New Hampshire. For these reasons, we believe the proposed variance will observe the spirit of both the ordinance and the master plan. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting this variance serves the interests of substantial justice. It will enable the property owner to transfer a portion of the land to the Amalgamated Squash Chowder and Development Corporation, which has leased the building since 1976. The property owner would benefit from the relief of tax and liability obligations associated with this parcel. Denying the variance would provide no corresponding public benefit as no new development is proposed and there would be no impact on density. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the abutters will not experience any substantial change from granting this variance. The area of the current recreational squash building will remain the only building on the lot with 3 parking spaces. It is our experience that creating a lot while making no improvements to the building or surrounding area will not diminish the surrounding property values. Unnecessary hardship. The general public purpose of the ordinance is to ensure land is used for its intended and appropriate purposes. Little enforcement of the ordinance would overlook the fact that this building, along with its use and location, predate the zoning regulations where relief is being sought. Consideration should also be given to the fact that this is a low-traffic area, therefore the variance will have no impact on the general public of Keene. For this and the reasons stated above, we believe there is no substantial relationship between the general public purpose and the division of this lot. The proposed use is a reasonable one. Well, we're going to skip that, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have any comments or questions from the board for the applicant on this last one?
I've got one question for you. Sorry to jump in
No,
on the
no.
last minute there, but, so the request is to give sort of a broad category to the parcel with regards to indoor recreation, and so is there any issue, at least where I'm thinking is, we put a restriction on it and just make it for a squash court like it's been for 50 years, right? Versus giving it the opportunity to become something else if they sell it to somebody else, and then indoor recreation becomes much more flexible, and who knows what's going to be there if we provide that. So just maybe you can speak to the long-term intended use.
So the building setbacks on the property, because we're proposing such a small lot, there's no room to expand. Any changes where somebody wanted to expand, they would definitely need to go to the planning board for a change of use. If they're doing anything besides the squash court, above and beyond the recreational purposes. Right now, it's a glorified shed, so to speak. I mean, it's a beautiful building, but you think of it to be more than it is. You open the door, you've got squash courts. And there's not a lot of room to do anything else on the property with the small lot that we're creating. So its intended use is for the squash court to, it's a historical part of Keene. It'll be something that they can actually, have as their own property, their own taxes, their own spaces. I think if somebody were to try to do something different in the future, they'd be hard pressed. Basically, they'd have to deal with a couple of rooms to be able to do something recreational, and I don't know how they would do that. Especially with parking, they have the 3 spaces. So I don't think that we're not proposing like a big parking lot, and leaving room for expansion or anything. We're giving them what's necessary to preserve what's there. Yep.
Any other questions? Any other comments, if anyone here wishing to speak with any clarification? Yes, sir, come right on up and say your name.
Thank you very much Vaughn Henham. I'm president of the Squash Club and have been for 12 years now, I think. I won't tell you why that is. We don't get a lot of takers to be presidents of squash clubs. This club is really quite unique. It was a Sears building. It was built in 1915, where the current TD Bank, and then it was moved, I think, pardon me?
1976 for the history.
Yeah, and then from 1976, if you were to ever come by to our club, we'd be happy to take you in and show you pictures of how the club moved down Main Street. They took down all the wires, brought it up Optical Avenue, and put it in its current location. It is, without doubt, the oldest freestanding squash court in North America. So it's really quite an exceptional asset for Keene, and we're really looking forward to just, kind of having our home entirely. So we certainly appreciate your deliberation and consideration of this request. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Are there any, no rebuttal, nothing else? So let's close the public hearing and go deliberate points 1, 2, and 3, going back to ZBA 2025-13. We could just start this. So granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. So this is dealing with the setback. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it meets that requirement. So the current use is going to be the future use of the current property, and it already doesn't meet the setback requirement. Where it's at.
And the building's already there, so you can't really change much of that. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. I believe. Any comments on that? Granting the variance would do substantial justice. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Don't see any issue with that. Unnecessary hardship owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provision to the property. It's definitely a unique property, and you can't really make use of that building in any other way. From what I understand, essentially, I did drive by it, and I actually missed it the first time because it was so hidden by trees. It's obvious that there's actually no parking on that lot at the moment, that if they do wish to be there, you actually have to park across the street in that big parking lot that was noted before.
Yes,
So,
the three parking spaces I did mention.
Yep.
It's a gravel driveway. I mean, basically, they pull in front of the building.
Yep.
Not much of a gravel driveway, but those are the 3 spaces.
yeah, so they really need their own, designated parking, so that made sense to me also. Any other comments?
No.
All right, do I have a motion to approve ZBA 2025-13?
I make a motion to approve ZBA 2025-013 for the variance to allow a 37.8-foot rear setback where 50 feet is normally required for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000-001-002, as shown in the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit dated August 15th, 2025, at a scale of 1 inch per 100 feet. Equals 100 feet, sorry. Prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants in the application and supporting materials received on August 15th, 2025 with no conditions.
And a second?
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
That was Mr. Burke and, sure, Mr. Leroy got the second on that. All right, let's vote on each of the criteria. Number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All in favor? Unanimous. Two, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All in favor? Unanimous. Unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All in favor? Unanimous. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All in favor? And on the main motion of ZBA 2025-13, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to ZBA 2025-14, discussing the criteria for this one. So again, this is the variance to allow a lot that does not meet the minimum lot size requirements. The key thing I noticed in the presentation is really the sliver that they're trying to take off is already delineated by existing roadways and stuff like that. So that's what sort of is creating that. And otherwise, you'd have to be changing a road, doing something like that. And since the usage seems to have so few people, it's not, expanding a lot for like more parking does not seem to be a necessity. So even though it's highly unusual that it's such a small lot, the placement of the building is almost in the middle of that sliver. So if it were on an end, maybe you could do more with it, but that actually limits what you could do with that also. From my point of view, granting the variance is not contrary to the public interest. Any other comments?
None other than I agree.
And number two, if the variance were granted, spirit of the ordinance would still be observed. Pretty much concur with that. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, it's already in use for what it is. They're not asking for a lot more parking. As a matter of fact, across the street is tons of parking that they're actually trying to separate it from. So I would actually think that if anything, it's going to maintain the kind of smaller usage that it seems to have already. 5A, unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship. And I think that we, again, agree that it's been in existence there. It's been a secondary use and not a primary use. But if you're going to split it off, that is sufficient size for it. It also actually prevents somebody from doing something bigger there. It would actually be very difficult to put a bowling alley in or do something else, even though that's covered under it's like, it's got to be one of the smallest squash courts here. It's actually official squash size? 1 court, yeah. So that's why 3 parking spaces is sufficient, because you're probably having people leave as other people arrive. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All right, so do I have someone making a motion for this ZBA 2025-14?
I will do it. Make a motion to approve ZBA 2025-014 for the variance to allow a .17 acre lot where 4 acres is normally required for property located at 150 Congress Street. Tax map 598-002-000-001-002 as shown in the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit dated August 15, 2005. At a scale of 1 inch equals to 100 feet prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants and in the application and supporting materials received on August 15th, 2025, with no conditions.
And do I have a second? It was Mr. Leroy and Mr. Burke made the second. All right, going through the criteria. Number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? All, that was unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? And that was unanimous. The proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, all those in favor? And final vote on ZBA 2025-014. All those in favor of that? Thank you. That is unanimous. All right, moving on to ZBA 2025-18. So discussion on this one, which is, just as a reminder, this is for allowing them to have an indoor recreation/entertainment facility where not permitted by the zoning regulations. So our first criteria is granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Thoughts on that?
I don't think it'd be contrary to the public interest, but I do like the idea of Ted's recommendation of maybe a special exception where it could only be the squash court as part of the motion to approve. That way it preserves the use as it is and doesn't allow anyone else to come in and use the indoor entertainment idea for any other use in the future.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on that? Sounds like a pretty reasonable. Okay, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Feeling on that? Pretty much in line? Okay. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, what it's already being used for. Okay. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. It hasn't diminished them in all these years, so I think we're pretty safe to continue. All right, unnecessary hardship, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. Again, if we enforce this, that property would, I don't know what you would be using it for. It doesn't seem to have any. And the proposed use is reasonable. Okay, so do I have someone who wants to make a motion for ZBA 2025-18?
So, we may need some help with this one, so I'm gonna look to Evan to help me with this, but I think based on the conversation we've had, we'd like to restrict the use in that zone to the use of the squash court. So to be able to state that correctly, would it be reading the suggested draft motion, but then putting a restriction on that?
Yeah, I would just change, instead of it saying no conditions, with the following condition, and then,
Whatever that condition is?
yeah, the recreational use shall be.
Limited to?
Yeah, limited to, squash. My only hesitation on this, and it's gonna sound a little insane, but what if somebody wants to use it for like pickleball? And now we're saying you can't play pickleball on here, you can only play squash. we might need a little bit of, I don't know if there's a way to open it maybe like a little bit more, without being so pedantic. Ed, save me.
I might suggest, for discussion at least, that the restriction make comment relative to squash and related racket sports. And, something to that effect.
That's kind of where I was thinking.
Because let's, and maybe it needs to be expanded a little bit more, but squash courts are unique in size and structure based on the nature of the game. Could it be converted to a handball court? Maybe. A tennis court, I don't know. I don't think the dimensions are right. Pickleball, don't think so. I think the dimensions are off. So, but trying to be fair to the applicant and keep the theme of what we're trying to accomplish here, maybe it's that general comment and related racket sports. I don't know if it's acceptable to the
Relative?
Yeah, I mean, are we splitting hairs for no reason? Is this never going to be any? I don't want to tie Amalgamated Squash's hands here unnecessarily. Like if you host events where you play other games in there, not like I'm going to send the squash police down to the corner of Marbo and Tiffin here to make sure that you're only using it for squash. But
There's no extra room. In the court is set exactly at, actually, it's old.
So actually, could you bring a microphone over to him so we can just approach and just say your name, sir?
Yep. My name is Randall Lake, and I'm at 73 Gun Road. It is set wall to wall is the size of the squash court. And it's actually a little different from a regular, normal size squash court. It was made for hardball squash, which is old. So there's nothing else you can do in that building. It's not big enough to play pickleball. It's not.
Right.
It's a different size for handball. Racquetball is a slightly different size court, but very similar to squash. There's really not much else you could do, if that helps.
squash or nothing, I guess.
So you want to just let it ride the way it is because,
If you let it ride the way it is, and someone wanted to change the use, they would have to come back, and that would probably be the best thing.
So question, Evan, within the recreation entertainment facility use, that sounds broad. And that's why we were talking about restricting it to squash so that somebody can't come in and do a entertainment facility next to the neighborhood.
So I'll read the definition, so we're not like so nebulous here. So a facility for spectator and participatory uses conducted within an enclosed building, included but not limited to movie theaters, live performance venues, nightclubs, indoor sports arenas, bowling alleys, skating centers, physical adventure facilities, and pool halls. So
I think you'd be limited, you wouldn't really be able to pull any of those things off, especially with no parking, just to point that out too. And with the setbacks the way they are, we've really limited the building to nothing, no expansion.
yeah, on the other side of that coin, though, is you could probably throw some billiard tables in there and convert it to a very different use. Or, I don't know, it's not the 90s anymore, so raves in random places aren't really a common occurrence, but nightclub, yeah, I don't know, maybe say limited to racket sports and be done with it.
okay.
So I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve ZBA 2025-018 for the variance to allow recreation entertainment facility indoor use when the use is not normally permitted for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map 598-002-000-001-002, as shown on the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit dated August 15th, 2025, at a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants, and in the application and supporting materials received on September 5th, 2025, with the condition that racket sports are the only allowed use.
Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
All right. The motion was made by Mr. Schrantz and seconded by Mr. Guyot. Let us go through the criteria. Yet again. All right, number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? Unanimous. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And on the main motion of ZBA 2025-18, all those in favor? All right, again, that was unanimous. Thank you very much. I suggest we take maybe just a 5-minute break to stretch the legs, and then we tackle the other three. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Resume, please.
The subdivision of buildings.
I can just hear the breathing.
All right, moving on, ZBA 2025-15. Petitioner Mike Goki of Markham Image, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefebvre of Fieldstone Land Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests a variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000, and is in the Industrial Park District. Petitioner requests a variance to allow a lot that does not meet the parking surface requirements per Article 9.4.2 of the zoning regulations. City staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this request is related to the parking lot setback requirements within Article 9 of the zoning code. We have a table within those regulations, Table 9-2, which is included in the staff report, and it requires a certain amount of like a green space sort of collar around parking areas, and that is based on the size of the parking lot. Starting with parking lots less than 10,000 square feet are required to have 8-foot front, side, and rear green space setbacks. And then we move up from there. So between 10 and 30, it's a 10-foot front and an 8 side. Greater than 30 but less than 2 acres is a 15 front and a 10 side. And then parking lots that are greater than 2 acres are 20 feet front and 15 side and rear. The applicant is requesting to have an 8-foot parking lot setback where 10 feet is normally required. So that's going to be a front, either that or a, I'll let the applicant explain that in greater detail, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I first want to thank you on that, the first 3 applications we put through. I know that that's going to make the Squash Club very happy. In regards to the remaining property of Markham Image, it would be great to be able to make use of these properties. As mentioned, they've been approached by several people. No one wants to lease. They're looking at this large plans. They're trying to get these buildings to get some use. I think what we're trying to propose is to make best use of the property. The industrial park is limited. These buildings are existing. When you look at them and you say, all right, how do we subdivide this? You have challenges. Because the buildings are existing, the only way to bring them into conformance would be to take them down. Very similar, we have issues with the parking lots. So we'd like to maintain every dimensional requirement. We simply can't. So we did our best to only ask for variances where we felt that they were necessities. One of them is the parking on the rear of the property. If we move the property line 2 more feet, it sounds incidental. That gets closer to the building, creates a greater restriction. We're trying to put the division line more in the middle of the 2 buildings, trying to just divide what's there. So we're to us, the parking is incidental. The goal of having that 10-foot setback, is more, my belief or my thoughts are, so you have a main road and you want to make sure that, you're set back far enough. You have a property where you're proposing new construction and you want to ensure that the neighbors are not violated. In this circumstance, all the infrastructure exists. We are asking for 3 separate variance requests in order to subdivide this property tonight. The first is the parking. The setback, 8 feet versus 10 that we have on our application, as mentioned, is simply because we're looking at it as a bigger picture with the buildings involved. I can run through all the criteria if there's no questions.
Any questions?
Just in general, I understand everything you're trying to do here, but question for Evan, just from a process standpoint, so the properties haven't been subdivided yet, right? But we're trying to grant, these variances on things that haven't been subdivided. And so I'm trying to figure out if we've got the
We-
chicken
we
and the
can't-
egg scenario here, right?
We can't go to the planning board to propose violations. So when the planning board gets there and says, you don't meet the requirements, we have to say, well, we have permission not to meet those requirements. So we have to come here before we can go there.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you asked that question because the planners, we've got an email listserv. This very question has been bouncing around the listserv all day today. In statute really lets you do it either way. It's the practice in Keene that we don't let applications go to the planning board until they have their zoning squared away. So in this case, just like what the applicant just said, they're going to be coming to the planning board with, if you grant it, their special permissions in hand, so that the planning board can then look, note the deviations from the zoning ordinance, know that it's already been addressed by the zoning board, and they can approve the subdivision as long as it meets all the other criteria. If you grant the variances tonight and something happens and the subdivision changes, those variances aren't necessarily valid anymore. It's very much a hand-in-hand process. And then we would reevaluate and see if it's a minor tweak and the spirit of this approval is still maintained, or if it's not, then they might have to come back for changes, for new variances to adjust. But the process is correct for them to come first and then to the planning board.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. Thank you for the explanation. I guess that was my confusion is, I would say, we grant this variance, but then something changes on the property, something changes on the application to the planning board, then is there a stopgap measure to prevent that variance sitting with the land going forward?
Yeah, if nothing happened, if they got their variances and then Markham completely changed their mind, right, and said, nope, we don't want to subdivide, we're just going to give Amalgamated Squash their little bit, and then we're going to keep our campus whole, those variances would just time out in 2 years of not being acted upon. These variances are very much related to the proposed subdivision plat that is part of the application materials for these and is the one that's currently in queue for the planning board. And that's part of why that approval motion language refers specifically to those materials. So if things change and they come in with new materials, oh, well, you didn't get a variance for that stuff, you got a variance for this stuff over here. So there's some protection in the process as well.
That's helpful, very helpful. So, again, just because we have to vote on each of these criteria, if just to figure out the briefest way to address each one, and then, and then we can proceed with, and I think in this case, we can do each of these submissions individually.
Yeah,
I think we'll-
I'm not worried about confusing the public at this point.
Correct, just us.
Okay, well,
We're already confused.
I know.
I'm hoping not to confuse you. As I mentioned, we did look at this as a whole, because the first time that Markham tried to do something with the property, it was disappointing to see that the person of interest, it was all for nothing. So, this opens the door for opportunity, where somebody wants this building or somebody wants this building, it doesn't matter, they're able to do it. We'll note that, a lot of these things do work with the buildings, utility separations, everything's kind of in place for this thing to work really well. The only problem is, like I said, when you go to subdivide this, you want this parking lot to stay with this building. But if you take the dimensional requirements literally, we're gonna pull up a parking lot that's been in existence, why? Or we're gonna have to take down a part of a building. So we literally have, 3 more applications before you tonight. I'll run down through them. The first one is for parking. We were looking more at the building separation than we were looking at the parking. And rather than have a bunch of jig jogs around stuff and removing some pavement, this stuff's in place. It's an incidental request. When you look at it as a whole, especially when you look at it as this, the dimensional requirements, it's something that's interior. It's not something that's in the public view. This lot line we're creating and the separation to the parking lot is internal. The public's not gonna see this unless they physically come onto the property, and they wouldn't know the difference between the two properties. So, in regards to that, I'm gonna read through you our application variance criteria from Article 9, Section 4.2. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. We do not believe it conflicts with the public interest. We believe the primary purpose of the parking setback, it deals with proposed development, visual properties, and doesn't necessarily deal with existing structures that predate the ordinance. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because, I'm going to pause right here. If I brief up on this, are you guys okay with that when it comes to the minutes? Okay. The spirit of the zoning ordinance is to ensure parking lots are not adjacently across from roads or properties or to guarantee visual appeal. As mentioned, somebody buys this property, they're buying it with that setback in place. There's no room for someone to come in and do something. We're solely asking for what's existing. I could read through the rest of them, but all of my variance criteria basically speaks to, we have existing improvements and we're trying to do the best we can to separate these properties, to make use of it, just like the master plan, asks for. It says, properties, I'd like to see these properties being used. We have a very small industrial zone, so incidental parking setback is what we're asking for.
All right, do we have any questions for him?
One question.
Yes.
So just help us understand, you talked about jigs and jags in the property lines, right? And so I'm looking at the packet of information. I'm on page 102.
Okay.
And so in between lot 2.2, proposed lot 2.2 and 2.3, there's a red line that goes through that median. And I think that's where the setback question is, right?
Yeah.
And so just help us understand why you just didn't move the property line 2 feet to the right in what looks like it could be in the median?
So, we can come up through here. What we're trying to do is have the parking lot go along this fence line that's right here, that's existing, that's already separating the properties. So, if we move it more this way,
Let's do this, John.
so we already have this building that's right here. And we have a-
Bring him a microphone just so we make sure we capture this for the minute taker.
I'm gonna do this, actually.
There you go.
So we already have a building that's here and a building that's here. And we're trying to come down to incorporate the landing that's right here. So there's a loading dock right there. We want them to own that loading dock. The rest of this would be easement to access it. So we kind of want them to own that. Then after that, we have the parking lot. There's going to be some snow plowing. We'd like them to be able to have and maintain that area right there. So we went along the fence line. And then when you get down here, it was just trying to make the least amount of jogs we could for the improvements that exist.
And quick question. So the variance is just along the line?
You're correct. Where this line's proposed, there's a parking lot and a fence there.
And in attempt to conform with the regulation, you would be having to rip out 2 feet of that parking lot, and then you would eliminate all those parking spaces along
I
that
think
part of the parking lot.
We're trying to make sure that the area that they're utilizing for snow storage is still part of that parking lot. So, right after that, we have the property. And then we have to come up to the loading dock, and I don't want this to be up over. It'll be very hard for someone to maintain jigs and jogs. We'd like it to be the most pleasant separation of the properties with any necessities such as utilities dealt with as a blanket easement or easements where required. So, I mean, we want the building, kind of want the land or the improvements relative to that building to exist. We want it to exist with the least amount of jigs, jogs, and angle points.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Does everyone feel that they have enough information to discuss and/or vote? All right, so let's close the public hearing part and go into each of the criteria. So granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Seeing as it, to me, it's contained away from the public in the first place, it doesn't seem like there would be any impact whatsoever to anything going on with the public.
Agreed. It is in that private space. You really wouldn't see this at all.
If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. I think the difference of just a couple of feet in that particular instance, if we force them to do it, again, it would actually make the parcels unattractive for someone wishing to buy it, as opposed to, oh, it makes sense, I can approach and go right to here or whatever. Following that, even though it's not, it's, you know, a slight deviation from what the zoning asks for. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, I think that we're kind of following the path of established construction, and altering that construction just to conform to zoning, to me, wouldn't be justice. That would be putting somebody out for being spiteful or something, I don't know. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not diminish. Should have no effect on surrounding properties. Unnecessary hardship owing to the special conditions of the property. Again, they're making use of existing lines. If it was a blank slate, you can do an awful lot more with it, but when you have stuff that's existing, that kind of creates a special condition. This is always our hardest thing to vote on, but in this case, if you don't want somebody to have to, you know, alter a building or alter parking or even access points, that kind of can create an unnecessary hardship. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All right, so do I have anyone who would like to make a motion on this?
Make a motion to approve ZBA 2025-015 for the variance to allow an 8-foot parking lot surface setback where 10 feet is normally required for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-000-001-002, as is shown in the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit dated August 15, 2025. At a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants, and in the application and supporting materials received on August 15th, 2025, with no conditions.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
So the motion was made by Mr. Burke and seconded by Mr. Guyot. Let us go through the variance criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? That's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Thank you. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous again. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. That's unanimous. Unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And on the main motion to approve ZBA 2025-015, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Let us move on to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
ZBA 2025-16, petitioner Mike Goki of Markham Homage, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefebvre of Fieldstone Lands Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000, and is in the Industrial Park District. The petitioner requests a variance to allow a lot that does not meet the minimum lot size requirements per Article 6.3.2 of the zoning regulations. We could hear from staff, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this application is to seek a variance to allow for a lot that is 3.52 acres in size, where 4 acres is normally required. Yep, that's it.
Okay, any questions for Evan? All right, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. As mentioned previously, you can see where we tried to create these lots. This parking lot is the main entrance for this building. So these belong together. This parking lot belongs with this building. It comes down to a part where this parking lot belongs to this building. So we're really chasing lot lines with existing features, and in order to meet the dimensional requirements, we'd have to move down and ask for a variance for setbacks, and they'd have to remove parking. So really, this is another one where this lot basically has as much as it can without interfering with the existing improvements relative to other buildings.
And that's the lot on the northeast side.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure for the public following at home. Okay, again, any other unique things that would address the criteria for us to discuss?
I believe that, I can read each one of the criteria once again. I'm stuck with the task of trying to find the best and the most appropriate boundary lines for a 31-acre parcel that now wants to be separated and has existing features. I believe our proposal captured the improvements for each one of the buildings, their parking lots, their associated necessities, and we just can't quite make it. So we're asking for 3.5 acres where 4 acres is the requirement.
Do we have any questions? Okay. It seems pretty clear to me, so no one here to speak in favor or oppose, so we'll close the public hearing and move on to deliberations. Again, this is pretty straightforward. I'll just read the criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. I don't think trying to enforce a 4-acre lot would change the usage ability there. It's not like adding another half acre would suddenly make them, be able to build some sort of additional industrial space or anything like that. But willing to hear other people. Okay, we all look like we concur with that. All right. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Again, I think it's close enough. It's still it's still very, it's 80% of what would be expected for an industrial site, especially with how things downsize. I would think that that's still going to be pretty attractive for somebody to move into. So 3.5 acres would be fairly good. Everyone else is good with that? Okay, granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, it's following the lines that are already established by existing utilities and buildings and parking. So trying to alter that wouldn't improve any functionality that we could see, and it's certainly not in any place where the public would notice at all if it was changed. So I would think it was doing justice there.
Agreed.
And if it were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Again, probably nobody else would even notice at all. And unnecessary hardship, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there'd be no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision, the specific application of that provision in the property. Then that's pretty much what all the other things led up to. It would be ridiculous to try and enforce that for this this piece when there's really there's no benefit to the public, and it would just be a hardship for the owner to try and make this work and actually mess up potentially 2 or 3 other parts of the parcel.
Agreed.
All right, so someone would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve ZBA 2025-016 for the variance to allow a 3.52 acre lot where 4 acres is normally required for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map 598-002-000-001-002, as shown in the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit, dated August 15th, 2025, at a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants, and in the application and supporting materials received on August 15th, 2025, with no conditions.
And do I have a second?
I'll s-
All right, so that motion was made by Mr. Schrantz and seconded by Mr. Leroy. All right, let us go through the variances, the criteria, excuse me. Number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those that's unanimous. Unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provision to that property. All those in favor? And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? Those are all unanimous for the minute taker. And on the final ZBA 2025-16, all those in favor? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, moving on to our last one. ZBA 2025-17, petitioner Mike Goki of Markham Image, 150 Congress Street, represented by Jonathan Lefebvre of Fieldstone Land Consultants, 206 Elm Street, Milford, requests a variance for property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map number 598-002-000, and is in the Industrial Park District. Petitioner requests a variance to allow a lot where the building currently encroaches approximately 4 feet into the 30-foot side setback line on the southwesterly corner per Article 6.3.2 of the zoning regulations. Hearing from city staff first, please.
This is just another example of what we've been really discussing this all evening, right? So there is a southwestern corner of one of the buildings that just the way the property line is being proposed to be drawn, it like just sneaks into that setback less than 5 feet. So the applicant this evening is requesting a setback of 25.93 feet, where 30 feet is normally required.
Thank you. And we can hear from the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Evan mentioned, we have 2 existing buildings, and we're proposing lot lines. If we don't have 30 feet between them, it's kind of hard to meet that requirement. We wanted to divide it, and we simply don't have the room to divide it, so we're here tonight seeking relief.
Do we have any questions? Could you, just on the map, just specifically show us, just for the record, where this is?
So we have. As you can see right here, you have this distance between the building isn't 30 feet, so I believe it's there.
Hmm.
Wherever D is.
Oh, sorry. We have right here as well, so it's those 2 spots. And basically, we don't have the room in between the 2 buildings. Right here, if we put the lot line here, this one meets it, this one doesn't. There's not 30 feet here, and there's not. There's not the 30 feet here. So it's one application, it's the same building, it's just, we can't propose a line because we don't have the room.
And that, the primary reason is that that proposed lot line is not a straight line because of the existing infrastructure.
It's simply because we need 30 feet between buildings in order to get, to meet the 15-foot requirement, and we don't have 30 feet. So no matter what you do, you're not going to get it.
Exactly.
So we did the best we could with what we had.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that if you corrected the encroachment on the setback for this building, you'd have an issue on the other building? Is that?
Yeah, and the only way to correct the situation would be to remove a building that's existing.
Right, which certainly isn't practical, so, thank you.
Okay, is there anything else unique to this specific part of the application as opposed to the other ones?
No, I mean, they're all the same. We're basically chasing around existing features, looking at requirements, and we simply can't subdivide it without relief. We're trying to separate ownership, and there's just no way unless we request variances.
And this particular one that you're asking for is, I don't want to say in the center of the, but it's well away from any public thoroughfare or anything. I mean, it'd be very hard for the public to even notice this.
Correct. Where the 2 buildings are existing, and the only division that anybody's going to see is that one building's owned by someone and one building's owned by somebody else, but all the site features are the same. No one will notice this. Where this location is in the central. Anyone buying this property won't be buying a property not knowing what they're getting into. We're creating these lots. We're doing it the best we can from the on-site features. The only way to subdivide this property would be that we would need to seek relief. There's simply not enough room.
All right. Any further questions for the applicant? All right, seeing no one in the public here, we will close the public hearing and go into our deliberations. All right, number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Any thoughts on that?
No.
No issues.
All right. I don't see any issue with that, with the fact that there's no public here showing any interest in it, and also the fact of the location and the small amount that this is actually deviating from what the normal zoning is. I don't think, again, somebody would have to really be eagle-eyed to be walking around there and notice that these buildings might be a little too close together. Okay, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Again, I don't think there's anything about this variance that would create some sort of heart palpitations in somebody because it was doing something that was creating, something that was, asking us to go off the normal course of things. It seems like it's fairly just a small deviation and not something that's asking for something significant. Any other thoughts?
I'd just like to point out that, really as part of this subdivision, the real change here is ownership. The site stays the same, there's no proposed development, and I think that that's special.
Yes, that's helpful, yes. Granting the, let me see, granting the variance to do substantial justice? Can't remember.
That's the next one.
That's the next one, okay. So, granting the variance to do substantial justice, yes?
Well, I think it would, because it's going to allow the subdivision to move forward.
I agree. I mean, if, as was stated in our earlier deliberations and even from the public in our earlier session, if one thing scuttles this, then, it really scuttles everything almost, because they're sort of tied together. So I think it would do justice because everything is fairly harmonious in terms of the attempt to do this subdivision. And if we were to force one thing out, it would maybe have a ripple effect on everything else. So that's my feeling on that.
Quickly, I'm sorry, I don't even think this is relevant or not, but is this preemptive to market these properties, or is it already contingent upon, sales contingent upon these subdivisions?
There's nothing contingent upon. There was something that was contingent the last time we came here. Someone had approached them, had a realistic goal, they invested a bunch of money into it, went nowhere.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're still looking to do something with these buildings. The few interests where people have shown, or the few people that have shown interest, no one seems to want to lease. Anybody that wants to invest money in the property wants to own it. We're trying to give Markham an opportunity to be able to use what they use and let other people use what they don't. I think this is a great opportunity where these buildings that are vacant will be used by somebody that can, and it'll allow for jobs and opportunities, and I think that everything aligns with the master plan. So, no, we don't have anything now, but we're hopeful that the plans that we have drawn up are attractive enough that we hope that we get people that'll come in, will want to use this, see the opportunity. The industrial park's limited, so this does allow for some opportunity.
And just for the record, we paused the deliberations for a moment just to get that information, so
Sorry for that.
that's all right. That's all right. Just setting it straight. But that was helpful. Thank you. Back to the deliberations. I think, are we on unnecessary hardship at this point? Because surrounding properties are fine. We were fine with that. Okay, special conditions, again, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance, specific application of that provision of the property, and the proposed use is reasonable. Any thoughts on that? Everyone's nodding.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that in order to accomplish the subdivision, you'd have to move a building or take down a portion of a building, and that seems like a pretty substantial hardship at this point, so.
Yep. Yep. Much more attractive if somebody says, hey, the building's all there, all you have to do is move in. Yeah. All right, I'll entertain a motion for ZBA 2025-17.
I'll move it. So I make a motion to approve ZBA 2025-017 for the variance to allow a 25.93-foot setback where 30 feet is normally required for the property located at 150 Congress Street, tax map 598-002-000-001-002, as shown in the plan titled Zoning Board of Adjustment Exhibit, dated August 15, 2025, at a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, prepared by Fieldstone Land Use Consultants, and in the application and supporting materials received on August 15, 2025, with no conditions.
And do I have a second? And, all right, that was Mr. Guyot who made the motion and Mr. Leroy who made the second. All right, going through our criteria. Number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Thank you. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those, that's unanimous. Unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision in the property. All those in favor? And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? Those are both unanimous. On the final ZBA approval of ZBA 2025-014, all those in favor? And again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank all the board members here tonight. I'd like to thank you, Evan, for helping me out with this application. I'd like to thank everybody for your patience tonight. I did limit it to 6 areas, so I thank you for your patience in getting through that.
We appreciate it too, believe me, yes.
Have a good night.
All right, do we have any new business? Do we have any staff updates?
What I will need is notice of decision.
Needless to say, we can get that to you.
So I think we have staff comments to receive from you. I don't think we've addressed anything because we're waiting to go here. So maybe Andy will just catch up this week and I'll let you know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, I think Megan's doing the subdivision. I'll touch base with her tomorrow, and we'll figure out what the next step for the planning board application is there.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool, you're welcome.
Do we have any staff updates?
Yes, we do. Corinne and I are working on amending the rules of procedure for the board. It's going to be a couple of different things. One of them is going to be clarifying what happens when an alternate is asked to sit in on an application and that application is then continued to subsequent meetings. We just had this happen at the planning board, so the planning board's planning on updating their rules of procedure, and then we're just gonna do it for the zoning board too, to make sure that it's crystal, if an alternate gets asked to sit on an application as a voting member, they will follow that application for its duration. So if it gets continued to the next meeting and then the regular full-time member that was absent previously is in attendance, they will still be able to sit and deliberate, but they have, their voting right has been transferred to the alternate, who has seen that application through in its entirety. So it's a really simple addition in the rules of procedure there. I noticed a strike through from a previous update, never actually got taken out of the rules of procedure, so I'm gonna clean that up. It's a couple little more tweaks here and there. The one substantive change is gonna be the application timeline, and that's so I don't go absolutely crazy trying to write 7 staff reports in a single week. like what happened with this bucket of applications. So we're going to change when the application deadline is, and then when the board packet needs to go out, and that's gonna buy me like a week and a half of extra time to actually look at everything, give better staff reports, and just, so for when we have months where we've got 6, 7, 8 applications, it's just a little more controlled. So that is going to be, the way it works is we introduce changes being made in one meeting, and then in the next meeting, we will vote on those changes. It's unclear whether you need to have draft in hand to count for that first meeting, as opposed to just talking about it in public. So we may vote on it at the next meeting, or the next meeting when I give you guys drafts of the changes, that'll count as the first meeting, and then we'll make the vote in December. So we'll figure that out.
All right. Anything else?
Let's see, the new master plan is officially adopted. So we're no longer working with the 2010 master plan, we're now working with the 2025 master plan. That's all on the website. There will be, I think we're making some print copies. I'm not sure if we're gonna make them available to everybody. But we are making a couple prints to have up on the 4th floor. If you're ever interested in wanting to peruse it, go for it. It is also on the website as well. And then that is that whole process took about 2 years, and it's the end of the beginning. There is a strong push to continue the sort of collaborative community building work that project sort of started. So we're going to be creating like task groups potentially and things like that to really target some of those goals that have been articulated in a meaningful way. So stay tuned.
Excellent.
And that's it.
All right. If there's nothing else, then we are adjourned. Thank you.